Hello again, YouTubers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm your host, the Board Game Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing a micro game put out by AEG and designed by Jason Tagmeyer called Maximum Throwdown. So that's Maximum Throwdown right there, again published by AEG, also known as Alderac Entertainment Group. Now, Maximum Throwdown is a tiny little dexterity card throwing game. Think the classic game that people used to play back in the day where you would flip baseball cards and try to land them on each other, way back before we had collectible card games and micro card games to play, when that was the most entertaining thing to do. Ugh. Anyway, so think that, but with some updated modern board game mechanics and some updated rules, and that's kind of what this is. The theme is really pasted on. It's a similar sort of theme that AEG did with their other much bigger and more successful game of Smash Up, where you can have all sorts of different factions from different sorts of fandoms facing each other. In this case, you've got dragons, demons, samurai, pirates, werewolves, aliens, just about everything in here, but the theme is really, really pasted on here. It doesn't feel like it has anything to do with the mechanics. But let's have a look at what comes in the box. So the first thing you get in the box is the rules. Of course, the most important part of any game. Now, the rules are one sheet, two sides. And they are exactly what you expect to get from a large, well-established company like AEG. They're well thought out, they're concise, and they leave no ambiguity. They will have you playing this game in probably about 10 minutes. They're actually that easy to read and just get going. One thing I really want to address, though, something that sticks in my craw in this rules sheet, and it has to do with how you decide who goes first in this game. See, here's the thing. Now, if you're a gamer, you know that some companies out there and some designers will occasionally put some pretty ridiculous ways to decide who goes first in their games. And some of them can be amusing, some of them can be very characterful for the game, and you might do them once in a while, but after a while you might just be flipping a coin or rolling a die and just ignoring them. This has one of the silliest, and in my opinion, one of the lamest ways to decide to go first of any game whose rules I have ever read. And that is, everyone who's playing the game, and this, by the way, this plays at 2 to 6 players. It's listed for ages 12 and up, and it's listed as a 30-minute game, which the rest of that I pretty much agree with. But everybody who's playing the game has to scream at the top of their lungs, "Maximum Throwdown!" And then whoever screamed the loudest is the first player. I am never going to do this. I have not done this. I've played this game several times, and it's not going to happen. And you know what? I mean, just so you don't think this is self-serving in any way, I have the loudest voice of any human being I've ever met. Some people have jokingly nicknamed me the human megaphone. I would always win at going first in this game, and yet it's so terrible an idea to be doing this, and so lame and so headache-inducing that I'm never going to do it. It's just terrible, and that's a really silly mechanic. I know this is a very light and silly game, but I don't like that. I really don't, and I want to draw attention to it. Now, let's have a look at the components of the game. So all of the components are cards, and there's a couple different kinds of cards that come in the box. So the first kind of card I want to show you is that there are cheat sheets, which are very nice, and AEG is usually pretty good at supplying some nice cheat sheets to you. Now, the cheat sheets have each of the factions on the back of them. So you've got aliens here, and on the other side, they have the different phases of the turn, along with cheat sheets as to what all of the different symbols there mean. And that's very important when playing the game. It comes in handy. Now, you've got aliens, you've got demons, you've got samurai, you've got pirates, you've got werewolves, and you've got dragons. Now, I do want to call attention to the fact that I like the art on these cards. It's the same for the back of the cards of that particular faction. All the cards of the werewolf faction, for instance, have the werewolf on it. And then on the other side, on the front of them, they have symbols on them, which is the main function of this game. You want to have these symbols up on the table, you want to have the card on other cards, and you want to have the symbols showing, which I'm going to show you how this works when I show you how to play the game momentarily. And now, the next kind of card I want to show you is the location cards. In addition to the separate deck of cards that you get for each faction, for instance, here are a bunch of the alien cards, and on the other side they're purple. Each faction has a different color, so that, for instance, they're yellow for the pirate faction, so that you do not confuse them when they're on the table. And then there are a number of locations which are very important for the starting setup, which I'm going to show you when I'm showing you how to play the game. And there is one for each of the factions. So obviously, this is the one for the aliens, and then that is the one for the demons. And for some strange reason, there's a giant runic pillar in the woods for the werewolves. They should have just probably had a dark forest with eyes glowing out of it. This one is the cave for the dragons. This one is obviously for the samurai, and this one is obviously for the pirates. And that's all of the locations. And then the decks are all, they differ from each other in what exact combinations of symbols show up in them. But for the most part, these, you don't really notice the difference. I mean, in the beginning of the game, you're going to pick which faction you're going to use, and you're just going to pick which faction you like the most. Do you really like the artwork on the back of the aliens? You're going to be the aliens. Do you really like pirates? Are you a big fan of pirates? You're going to be the pirates. You're not going to do a bunch of research and try to figure out what the different factions do. And to be honest, when you're playing the game, they don't actually feel all that different. So you know what? Let's go over the table. I'm going to show you how this game plays, and then we're going to come back. I'm going to tell you how it feels, I'm going to review it, I'm going to rate it, and we're going to get a second opinion from Wes. Okay, so here we can see a game set up for a two-player game of Maximum Throwdown. Each player has chosen a faction. We are playing the werewolves versus the aliens. And we have 3 locations set up. You could use the location specifically from your faction, but as you usually want to use at least 3, you're going to wind up using some if you're playing 2 players that are not from the faction you're using. So it doesn't really matter. The different locations have absolutely no difference in effect on the game. They're just placeholders. Then each player, of course, gets one of these cheat sheets. Now I want to draw your attention to the cheat sheet because it tells you a lot of important information. The first thing it does, it tells you the turn sequence, which goes evaluating the active icons. That means the cards that are already on the table. For instance, if there was a card here, you would evaluate what icons are on the card to decide points and what special abilities you're going to get from that. Then you get to score points. Points are done by scoring 1 point for every 6 pips, like a die side pip that you see there on that bottom symbol, every 6 of those that are showing that no part of which is covered. If any part of any of the icons is covered, they do not count and you do not get to use them. Then you get abilities for each of the other things. Every plus symbol lets you draw an extra card. Every throw symbol lets you throw an extra card. Any extra cards you have left over that are still in your hand will go back to the top of the deck. The break symbol allows one of your throws that doesn't land on another card to stay on the table. Normally when you throw a card, it's got to land partially on the cards that are already on the table, and if it doesn't, it gets discarded. The steal icon during the attack and steal phase allows you to take one of your opponent's cards and throw it, and the attack icon allows you to take one of your opponent's cards and discard it. And that's all there really is to it. Normally the first thing you're going to do is evaluate the icons, then you score points, then you do attacking and stealing, then you draw 1 card plus all of the extra draw icons you have, and you throw 1 card plus 1 for every of the extra throw icons you have. So I'm going to run you through a couple turns so you can see how this game plays. As the werewolf player, I'm going to draw 1 and throw 1. I drew this card here that has a single plus icon and a hand icon, which would allow me to, if both icons stay showing by the time my next turn comes around, I will get to draw an extra card and throw an extra card. So now when you're throwing it, you have to stay not over the playfield. Your hand cannot go over any of the cards, and you have to toss the card and try to make sure it stays the right side up and lands on the other cards. So I have successfully done that. But now that's it, because my turn's over, because I already passed by the part of the turn where I would have gotten to use those icons. So it's now my opponent's turn, and my opponent wants to cover up my symbols. So my opponent, the alien player, now drew this card here that has 6 pips worth, which would be able to score 1 point, a steal symbol, and a extra throw symbol. So they're going to throw, and they're going to try to cover up my card, which they were able to cover up one of the symbols on my card, but I still get to draw an extra card. So back to the first player. The first player is going to draw 2 cards and pick one of them to throw. They're going to pick the one with the lots of symbols. They're going to put the other one back on top of their deck because they're not going to need it, because it's the only symbol that matters to them at the moment. And they're going to try to cover up the aliens card, which, not bad. It covered up all the points from the aliens card. A little bit of coverage there is enough. Well, that's all they need to do. So back to player 2. Now player 2 gets to throw an extra card, but they don't get to draw an extra card, so that doesn't matter. They also don't get to score any points, so that doesn't matter, because they've been all the pips have been partially covered, but they do get to do a steal. So for the steal, they're going to draw one of their opponent's cards, and they get to throw it. Now here's an interesting thing about how this works. When you're choosing to throw a card, you can choose to throw it upside down, which means you have no risk of giving your opponent any new symbols. In addition to that, you could just throw it off to the side and allow it to get discarded, or throwing it this way, you could try to use it as an extra chance to cover up some of your opponent's symbols. So that's what they're going to do, but they missed. It went totally off. It was a bit of a long throw. They're going to discard that, and then they're going to draw one of their own cards and try to throw, and they accidentally covered up some of their own symbols, but covered up one of their opponents as well. But now going back to their opponents, the werewolf player will get 1 point for having 6 pips here on this turn, and they'll get to do 1 attack and 1 steal. So the attack is they draw the top card from their opponent's deck and discard it. And the steal is, again, like they did with their, like their opponent just did, they get to take one of their cards and try to throw it. And again, my aim is rather off today, and I have missed, so that is just going to get discarded. But then it is my turn to draw a card and play a card, and I'm going to make an attempt again to cover some of my opponent's icons, and I have messed up and covered up some of my own. No big deal. I still got a lot of icons going in. We'll go back to my opponent's turn. And that's really how it goes. Now my opponent here would get to actually draw 2 cards and throw both of them. So let me just show that real quick. They're going to draw 2 cards. They don't have enough pips to get a point, but they do have a steal. So they're going to take a steal. They're going to do an attempt. I messed that up too. They're going to throw one of their own cards to try to cover up, and you can move around the table as you do this. That one went totally off. That one covered up a couple of my opponent's icons. And this is how it goes. You go back and forth. You try to cover up your opponent's cards. You see what icons are showing. It's a very quick and simple game. And every time when your turn comes around and you have at least 6 pips showing, you get to score some points. 1 point for every 6 pips showing. When one player runs out of cards, they keep taking turns, mainly for the purposes of stealing, attacking, and scoring. And the game does not end until all players run out of cards. Once all players have run out of cards, whoever has the highest point total wins the game of Maximum Throwdown. So now let's head back to the table. I'm going to review it and rate it and tell you how it feels, and then we're going to get a second opinion from Len. So, welcome back. That was how you play a game of Maximum Throwdown. Now, this game is not good. I'm sorry. But it's not. It's not a very good game. We got this game for well, not really for free. We paid to go to the AEG game night, as we try to do just about every year at Gen Con. This was a few years ago, and this was one of the games that came in the AEG game night box. Most of the games that came in the box that year were really good, and I liked a lot of them. This was not one of those. This game, you know what? The game itself does not feel all that different from the source material, which is obviously flipping cards. They added on all these extra mechanics and these extra special rules. In reality, it's like a bunch of extra special bling you know, wrapped around a beater car. It's a crappy basic mechanic that doesn't really need to have been updated and isn't worth having been updated, and they put all this shiny fancy stuff on it, and it shows. The theme is totally pasted on and is basically non-existent, and the game itself of just tossing the cards as a dexterity game, if it's a nice day outside, I'd rather play bocce ball as a dexterity throwing game. If it's not a nice day outside, I'd rather play darts indoors than play this game. So now, over the last few years that we've had this game, I've only played this game a handful of times, and mainly because I kept thinking, you know what, maybe I'm not giving this game enough of a chance. Maybe I'm just not getting it. And then I played it one more time before doing this review because I was like, you know, maybe I'm just really, really not giving it a fair shake. But that's not the case. I was giving it a fair shake. It's just not a very good game. There's not much there. So that's why, out of 10 stars, I'm forced to give Maximum Throwdown only 3 stars. And it makes me sad to give a game such a low rating, but it deserves it. 3 stars means it's a bad game, and I'm probably never going to play it again. And at this point, I have come to the decision that I'm going to sell this game because maybe someone else will appreciate it more than I do. Maybe someone else will like it more. Could be. But for me, this is a 3-star out of 10 game. But let's get a second opinion. Lynn, how many stars out of 10 would you give to Maximum Throwdown?
4.
Lynn and I are not that far off on this. We both kind of were like, there's got to be more to this. But you know what? The biggest complaint that I think both she and I had with this game is that they have all these different faction decks, and they're supposed to feel different, and they really don't. They have the same group of symbols, just in different quantities and in different configurations, and you barely notice. There's really not a whole hill of beans of difference between each of the different factions, at least not that you notice while playing. It's really about throwing the cards. So there you have it. 3 stars from me, 4 stars from Lynn. Neither one of us can really recommend this game to you. But you know what? Maybe if you really like dexterity throwing games and you really like to throw cards, maybe this might be a game for you. If what we talked about sounds fun to you, feel free to buy this game and tell us we're idiots. That's fine. Do you have Maximum Throwdown? Do you enjoy this game? If you do, feel free to put it in the comments down below and let me know that I'm wrong. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns on this video, feel free to put them in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this review and would like to see me do more like it, please give me a like, share this video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Kaptain, that's Captain spelt with a K, on YouTube. And until next time, game on.